What do anxiety, insomnia, heavy bleeding, and autoimmune flare-ups have in common? They can all be signs of low progesterone. Welcome back to the Hormone Shift Show, the podcast about the shift for women in the shift. I'm your host, Leslie Duffy. Most women have never really heard much about progesterone, yet it's the first hormone to decline in perimenopause. And when it does, the symptoms send many women to their doctors only to walk away with another prescription. Progesterone isn't just about your period. It's tied to your sleep, your mood, your energy, and even your immune system. And between the ages of 35 and 50, it drops by nearly 75%. So is that drop just a normal part of aging? Yes and no. Here's the truth. Age is not the only reason why progesterone decline. And if you don't know what's really behind it, you'll miss the chance to actually fix the root cause. So today I'm breaking it all down. We're going to talk about how progesterone works in your cycle and why it matters in perimenopause and menopause. You're going to learn the signs and symptoms of low progesterone. You're going to find out what actually causes low progesterone besides aging, because sometimes it's not just about getting older, and what your doctor might recommend versus how we look at it in the functional medicine world. You're going to learn that too. And make sure you stay to the end because you're going to learn the missing link that can make everything much worse if it's not addressed. Let's talk about how estrogen and progesterone are related to each other. So if you think about estrogen as the building blocks that builds the lining of the uterus, and that would be the building blocks to build the uterine lining right before ovulation and to prioritize conception. Now, progesterone is the mortar. It's what we put on the bricks to keep the bricks in place. And it stabilizes that uterine lining and it prepares the uterus for implantation. So here's what you need to know, that without enough progesterone, estrogen is going to dominate. And when estrogen dominates, you're going to get a lot of heavy bleeding. You're going to get more clots and irregular cycles. Now, 5 to 7 days after ovulation, the egg will leave the ovary, and what's left over is almost like an eggshell. And the lining of that eggshell is what actually makes progesterone. So the quality of your ovulation does matter. If you're not fully ovulating, if you've got half of an ovulation, if the egg is not fully released from the ovary, you're not going to get a full amount of progesterone being made. And in this period between those years, 35 to 50 years old, your estrogen might decrease about 35%. And remember, estrogen goes up and down. However, progesterone is a steady decline and it can decrease up to 75% from the beginning. So that is a sharp drop and it explains many symptoms at this stage. And it also matters in menopause. Now, if you're already in menopause, you might think progesterone no longer applies to you. I'm not getting the uterine lining ready for implantation. But even after your cycle stops, progesterone is still active in your body, and it promotes the calming neurotransmitter GABA. When progesterone drops, the calming GABA signal, it weakens, and it really does explain a lot of the anxiety and all those other neurological symptoms that we're getting around this time. So many of my clients actually come to me for these reasons alone. And we're going to keep going because it'll all make sense at the end, but you'll see why. But this is one of the main reasons why somebody would go see a practitioner, either conventional or a functional medicine practitioner. So it's one of the main reasons why women go to the doctor. It's like, I can't sleep, I'm more anxious, I've got brain fog. So let's get into those symptoms of low progesterone. For example, menstrual reasons. It could be the heavy bleeding, the clots, fibroids. It could be from PMS. Reasons why you might be feeling a little bit more PMSy is you have low progesterone. You could be having neurological symptoms like insomnia, anxiety, migraines, mood swings. It also will affect your fertility. So you might have trouble conceiving. You might be at risk for early miscarriages. The physical symptoms of low progesterone would be water retention, bloating, breast tenderness, and fatigue. In the long term, it actually disrupts your thyroid and it can cause bone loss. So One of the symptoms of progesterone, which I found incredibly interesting, which really makes a lot of sense. Many of my clients, when they come to see me, are struggling with autoimmune dynamics, and women over 40 generally are very at risk for Hashimoto's is one of the most common ones. And in my research, we found out that progesterone helps to regulate your immune system. It keeps the immune system balanced. In pregnancy, it's also immune modulating because in pregnancy, it's the high progesterone. It helps to prevent the body from rejecting the embryo, and it calms any sort of inflammation in the body. Low progesterone could mean a higher immune vulnerability. So we want to support progesterone in perimenopause so that it helps protect us against autoimmune risk. All right, let's get to why we're really here. Causes of low progesterone. And it's not just aging, which is, I really want to explain that because a lot of other symptoms overlap with symptoms of low progesterone. But we do want to address possible low progesterone due to ovulation issues, like we said before, weak or absent ovulation. I actually review a lot of Dutch tests for my clients. It's an acronym for dried urine tests for comprehensive hormones. And you can see that very often in women at this stage because you can tell that they have low progesterone because maybe they haven't ovulated. And that in perimenopause, very common to be not necessarily ovulating every month and skipping a period, for example. That would be an example of that. And that's where we get the estrogen progesterone imbalance. So maybe we're having some ovulation issues. We want to also look at what's causing you not to ovulate. These are things that we can also look at and try to get to the root cause of. Some things like lifestyle and stress will cause a imbalance in your ovaries, and that's called the hypothalamus pituitary ovarian balance. Things like overtraining, for example, chronic stress, even what we call now stress can be overt stress, things that you're dealing with at work or maybe relationships. But then there's other types of stress, like physiological stress, like an infection, even stealth infections that you don't realize that you might have. I've seen this very commonly with a lot of clients. They might have a low-grade H. pylori infection, or they might have believe it or not, a root canal issue. They might have a tooth that needs a root canal. These things do create stress in your body. So those would be like those stealth infections that you don't even realize that you're dealing with, even a gut dysbiosis or gut infection. Another one that might be under the radar that is a stressor for the body would be undernourishing. If you're not eating enough, and this happens so often with my clients, they come to me because they want to lose weight. And in fact, they're under eating and they're stressing out their immune system, and they end up not promoting ovulation because of things like under eating. Another reason why you might not necessarily be making enough progesterone could be sedentary living. And if you're sitting too much, we actually need blood flow to the ovaries, and we also need blood flow to our brain. So if you're not getting enough of that, you are at risk for not ovulating ideally and optimally. Now, it's huge. This is a huge one. We're all sitting on our chairs. I'm sitting on mine right now. But blood flow to the brain and the ovaries will cause you to have suboptimal ovulation. And even things like surgery or smoking or diabetes, having surgery, scars, anything like that would also decrease blood flow to your ovaries, and that is going to make a big difference. So we want to make sure okay, it's not just aging. These are things that we can control. Other things that would also cause you to have low progesterone would be medical conditions like PCOS, diabetes, and if you're on a statin for whatever reason, even a low cholesterol, those are cholesterol, the fat, cholesterol they are the building blocks of hormones. And we really need to optimize that, make sure that we have enough fat in our diet in order to make these hormones. Medications and other interventions, for example, hormonal birth control, Mirena IUD it is not a real progesterone that is in the Mirena IUD, so it will cause a real low progesterone in your body. It will not do both. Having any sort of non-steroidal anti-inflammatories like NSAIDs, anything for more than 10 days can also affect your progesterone factory. And we can also attribute opioids or even antihistamines. Believe it or not, antihistamines like these are H2 blockers like Zantac, Pepcid, or Tagamet. And these things will also affect if you are making enough progesterone. Okay, so what happens when you go to your doctor and you've got all of these symptoms? Your doctor's job is to address the symptoms, usually with pharmaceuticals. So that's why it's very important that you know about this, because when you go to the doctor, you might be prescribed a birth control pill. You might be prescribed sleep medication. You might be given an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety medication, or even more non-steroidal anti-inflammatories like ibuprofen for pain and for migraine. And all of these things are kind of like that Band-Aid approach. So in functional medicine, what we do is we ask, why is your progesterone low? We want to support your ovulation. We don't want you going into early menopause, because if you don't address it, you're at risk for earlier menopause. And you're also at risk for thyroid disease and other issues. We also would want to support you in other ways. We want to address your stress, your thyroid, your blood flow, and believe it or not, your mitochondrial health. Remember that from science class back in high school? The mitochondria, those energy powerhouses of the cell, those are very important in your hormonal landscape. The other thing is nutrition. So we as functional medicine providers would absolutely address your nutrition to get you at optimal health, to make sure that you're ovulating and that we are minimizing the effects of low progesterone and getting you to ovulate on your own without any sort of interventions there. Now, if you're later in your hormonal journey, perhaps you're later over 45 years old, then we might do other things to help promote your progesterone also. One of them could be even bioidentical progesterone replacement. Okay, so this is what is, I think, one of the most important links in this podcast, hands down, is that chronic stress is going to make your body prioritize your survival over your fertility. And if you're young and you're in your 35s, 40 up to 45, even beyond that, and you want to get pregnant and you're very, very stressed out, your body's not going to prioritize your fertility. Your body is going to prioritize your survival. This is the biggest link, I think. The brain is coordinating all of this. Now, the brain is going to perceive us running to our lives. If we have this prolonged stress response, we're running for our lives. We're not going to be prioritizing having sex and reproducing. We're going to prioritize our survival. And that's more important to your brain. We got to get through the day. We got to get through the week. We're not going to be friskier. We're not going to be more fertile. And that higher stress state also will force you to lower your metabolism. It's going to reduce your luteinizing hormone, another hormone. We're not even going to talk about it today, but it's going to reduce other hormones. The brain is helping us thrive in an environment that we are asking it to live in. And so this is kind of like that stress steel. They call it the stress steel, where nutrients are going to go towards survival instead of reproduction. And that's why this is so important. You cannot out supplement your stress. That is just not possible. The brain is onto you. It's going to know. I've had way too many clients who have walked into my office and wanted to take all the supplements, but in the end, the only thing that really helps is when we can address the stress. And all of this, by the way, you will have notes. I have a quick guide that I have shared in the show notes. You're going to get a quick guide so that you get these bullet points and a couple of action steps to go along with it. And I also want to make sure that we understand that stress is both mental and physical. So we have infections, toxins, even food sensitivities. And that's how I've been helping a lot of my clients, where we might discover that they've been allergic to dairy this entire time, or they've been allergic to something else, or they have a toxin. We have discovered mold sensitivities and any sort of gut infections. I cannot tell you the amount of things we have discovered once you look under the hood. So anyway, so we want to really identify the root cause and what would be a disruptor of your hormones here. And that would be doing a little bit of a deeper dive and identifying any sort of stressors that you can see on the surface, and such as like poor sleep, over exercising, skipping meals, under eating, and then any sort of nagging unresolved infections that you might can think of. And one way to support, of course, your stress in this time period is to support your brain's calming system by protecting your sleep, your stress recovery, keeping a consistent bedtime, limiting alcohol and caffeine, and using stress management practices like yoga, breath work, meditation. All of those things are going to help your GABA function more effectively. Always remember that stress is the ultimate disruptor. Your body is always going to choose survival over balance. And that's why supporting progesterone is not just about a hormone. We're looking at the whole environment. We're looking at how you eat, sleep, move, and manage your stress. So if you're dealing with anxiety, insomnia, heavy bleeding, or autoimmune flares, it's not just getting older. It could be low progesterone, and there are safe, effective ways to support your body throughout it. In the show notes, I have a cheat sheet for you. It is a quick summary of everything that we talked about. And if you are in perimenopause or even menopause, you don't want to guess or piece this together on your own. I recommend you book a 360 wellness assessment. It's a 60-minute visit with me, and we're going to uncover what's driving your symptoms and map out a plan that even most doctors don't have the time or aren't trained in giving you. So this is a must-have step for managing perimenopause. We can go over your supplements, and we can also look at anything that you want to present to me in our visit. And you're going to end up with a lot of clarity and a lot of confidence in what's actually going on with your health. I only book a few calls a week for this, so I really would love to meet you, and grab your appointment through the show notes, and I will see you there. Okay, my friend, that's what I have for you today. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it with a friend and rate the podcast and subscribe or follow. I would love to hear from you. If you have any comments, please let me know. You're also welcome to email me at leslie@thehormoneshiftshow.com. I look forward to next time. Take care, everyone.